kick it off, Justin, of just kind of telling us a little bit about your career journey and your background and how you
Sure.
got to where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, so my businesses are in Houston, but I'm born and raised Houstonian. I spent a good amount of time elsewhere, different places. I went to upstate New York to go to Culinary Institute of America. I've cooked in Chicago. I've cooked in Napa Valley at a restaurant called Ubuntu, which was one of the first restaurants that was completely, we call it, it's vegetarian, but we call it vegetable driven to have a Michelin star. And then after that, I went to Europe and cooked in Belgium for a little bit, also a little bit in Copenhagen. Came home, worked at a couple different places, and ultimately in 2012, I opened up a restaurant. It was called Oxheart that lasted for 5 years, and that's kind of where we got most of our notoriety from. It was pretty new for Houston at the time. I was younger at the time. I was 26 at the time, and it was a tasting menu restaurant, and that was the only option that you had. And I was really kind of driven and inspired by my travels in Europe, wanting to kind of present a really, really succinct, very direct kind of menu that was almost just reflective of my inspirations overall. So that's probably actually why I only lasted for 5 years, because it seemed at some point that it was a little bit of a selfish endeavor. But that was very, very rewarding at the time. Got a Best New Chef from Food and Wine at that point, James Beard Award with myself and my team. I think in 2016, I don't even remember anymore. and after 5 years, I closed that and opened up a little bit more casual restaurant called Theodore Rex. It's in the same spot, and it's named after my nephew. It's he's lighthearted and playful, so I wanted to be a little bit more lighthearted and playful. And then that's kind of that year I started to expand as well with a really good friend of mine. His name is Bobby Hugel. He's honestly one of the biggest bartender names in the country and even internationally. And we opened up a bar together called Better Luck Tomorrow. And then 2 years ago, we opened up a restaurant called Squabble in Houston Heights, which was kind of our way of helping support people that we've worked with for years. So my old sous chef from Oxheart, Mark, is the chef there, and the old general manager from Anvil, which probably works at Terry, is the general manager there too. And then same couple things. I had a couple of other projects along the way that aren't with us anymore. One of them is called Public Services, which I opened. Is a wine and whiskey bar that was in downtown Houston, a really beautiful space. And there was a all-day cafe, kind of had a coffee and food component and wine bar component called Penny Quarter that was in Montrose. Those unfortunately kind of went by the wayside in the last year for different variety of different reasons. But I'd say that we're pretty lucky overall to, kind of still be afloat and still have jobs and still be able to provide for a lot of employees.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible. So not only are you a chef, but you're also like a full-fledged restaurateur, an entrepreneur and small business owner many times over, which is perfect for the All You Need audience, because I think a lot of the people that we're servicing through All You Need method have that creative side and are looking to kind of bring their inspiration to make it either a full-time business or to learn how to scale a creative business that they already have. Like, how did you know you wanted to be a chef, and at what point did you kind of like lean into the actual entrepreneurial aspect of like going after multiple restaurants?
Yeah. So, I mean, becoming a chef was always a lifelong dream. I think I'm really, really lucky to know since I was probably in pre-K, I knew I wanted to be a chef. So I have aunts that moved from Hong Kong to the States, obviously before I was born, and they owned a restaurant for 25 years. And kind of so we would visit them every summer, and it was just one of those places where I loved it so much, and I loved the restaurant setting, and I loved serving people, and I loved cooking. And so I wanted to be exactly like them. And so the chef aspect of it was always something that I've always wanted to do. I actually, again, in that same way, I also kind of knew that I wanted to have multiple concepts and not just be kind of chained to a singular stove for my entire career. I think a lot of it kind of came born out of both a desire to like, I love and admire a lot of really high end restaurants, but I also like love having a burger. I love having like going to small discoverable places. And so I didn't really want to, you know, a lot of us have like ADD, and it's like, I didn't want to just be known for one singular thing at a singular price point. Um, and it's actually just worked out for me as a business as we grew, just because it allows us to kind of touch different people and different clientele, different parts of the day for anything, different price points. If they just wanted to grab a coffee and some breakfast with us, or go to one of our bars and have a late night burger, or have a full-fledged meal, that they knew the quality, because of the people that were standing behind it, would always be high. But the restaurateur aspect of it, I think it was, honestly, I actually read a book by Danny Meyer, like very young, like when I was still in culinary school. And so he was always a huge inspiration for me. And the only way you can do it is just by having trust in the people in a training program that you know that works.
Yeah.
So, and also, I'm sorry, my dog likes to
Oh,
bark.
no worries. I'm the one barking for once.
I thought it was Sunny.
Yeah, there's a dog barking, it's usually Sunny. So that's so awesome. Like what a gift to kind of like have that vision from a really young age.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I call myself very, very lucky. A lot of people don't know what they want to do until later in life. And you know, I think I had a very straight line, very narrow view of, I never wanted to be anything else. And I think that was very lucky of me. Obviously too, like it's been interesting too, as you kind of grow a little bit, you get to experience different parts of the restaurant, like things like even design, branding, artwork, music, all those types of things. And as you kind of grow into those different types of roles, maybe you transition a little bit out of the chef role. You kind of transition more into that, you know, you see a restaurant as a whole, as a macro, as opposed to specifically just the food in itself. So
so you mentioned quality, but so I'm in LA, Catherine's in Houston. So Catherine has been to all your restaurants, but
yeah.
What does your brand stand for, or what do you want it to stand for? And like, did it happen organically, or was it something that like you kind of sat down and thought about, or how did you figure out, like, because Catherine and I believe that, you know, decor, like how you, even down to like flatware, tableware, all the details can actually make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
In your brand and building your brand, and even like thinking about what personality you want your brand to have, or just like what you want your brand to stand for. And the early stages as a small business owner can really help kind of grow your brand in a certain direction and stand out. So what's your brand?
I mean, I think there's always been a general amount of playfulness in everything that we do. So at Oxheart, there was like a little stolen idea, but it was like something that was very definitely new for Houston. There was a restaurant called Relay in Copenhagen that actually just closed this past year, when it was 10 years old. It was one of those restaurants that I think defined a lot of what my career is. And they had like leather aprons, and they had little drawers in the sides of the table where you could kind of open it yourself and set your own table. And that kind of like those little pieces of detail work really hit home with me. Something as simple as a playlist. You know, at that time they were like almost all Johnny Cash. And so it was like, for them, it was like kind of, you know, the restaurant felt a little bit of rock and roll, but the thing is that it had a lot of personality. And I think that that's one thing that that we wanted to make sure that every single different place had its own distinct personality, as opposed to being a little bit of a copy of what we've done in the past. But I think the detail work overall in our brand is things that people really, really appreciate. Anything from the little garnishes that we put on the plates or the drinks, to the way that we set silverware, to the way that you know, our uniforms are, even down to the playlist. And like, you'll see us kind of like walking into the dining room and readjusting the lighting as the day goes by, turning up the playlist or turning up the music, and even to little things like we have little slide out tables, and what is essentially a very small table you can make into a slightly larger table at the bars, so that it kind of accommodates the eating aspect of it. So I think our brand has a lot of it's very personality driven, and I think a lot of times it did happen organically. I think especially when you're younger and you're kind of cost cutting, you don't have a huge budget. You really want to focus on those small bits and pieces of detail so that people start to get to understand you from a very early age, or especially if your business is young. So they learn to look for these little things, and it could even be something as simple as, and I think that a lot of people do this really well, is like in your social media, you use the same background if you're doing food, right? So it's like you're scrolling down, and you see a particular background, and you know it's from this restaurant, and you know you're immediately drawn in from that. So
I love that. And kind of leads into what I was thinking is, from the past year and all of the, restaurants being closed for a while and then now at a certain capacity and all of that, how have you kind of transitioned, or, how have you made your branding apparent or really connected with your customer without having them being able to experience those little in-person details or the normal dining experience that they usually come in for? I know you did Money Cat at T-Rex, which we've loved during the pandemic. And, I feel like being innovative has helped your restaurants kind of stay afloat. So would love to hear about that.
yeah, so we did at T-Rex, Theodore Rex, we did two separate pop-ups as opposed to just keeping the Theodore Rex food to go, just because it's not really a type of food that holds well all to go. It doesn't transfer all that well. It's very texture driven. So obviously texture is kind of the first thing to go by the wayside, and seasoning to go by the wayside when you're only allowed to do to go. And especially too, people really kind of love the very small touches that we do during service. And I think that our team is really, really great at that. So, I have two kind of like off brands that, and I would say that while I never envisioned myself to be like that, being present in social media has helped out the businesses quite a bit, just because, I think people really want to get to know you and within your food and your service and your business. So one thing I did when I was coming up, just to make a little bit of money while the restaurant was being built, is called Money Cat Brunches. So Money Cat is just kind of a born out of idea. Like, I love kind of grungy Asian food that's very unapologetic. It's high in spice, high in sour, high in flavor. And it's like a kind of like a sock in the mouth. It's just like a lot of flavor, a lot of personality. So we ran that for about a month. And every time we do a Money Cat brunch, it always sells out. And so we did that for a month, 4 days a week. And it was really great to be able to kind of lean into something like that has kind of like an alternate personality that you can kind of rely on. A second thing that we did was this thing. So I think there's two things that people like kind of like unabashedly, or maybe a little bit people consider basic, but like I'm okay with. Like, first of all, I love Taylor Swift. And then second of all, I love Houston's, which is now Hillstone, but that Hillstone brand. And it's two things that people can relate to, and sometimes they're not even like, they're not excited about telling people, but I'm okay with being myself, so I think there's a level of confidence in it. And so we did a little pop-up called Houston's, where I kind of riffed off of the food at Houston's. And the things that we're able to do with that, in order to just be able to stand on the quality, and we talked earlier about quality basis, like little things like how we package the food, the sauces that were supposed to go with a specific dish were labeled and then like stickied onto the lids of the boxes, and then double bagging things. So that these are little things that maybe people don't really think about as they're ordering to-go food. But these are things that I think restaurants have been really excelling in. And those little bits and pieces and those touches really help people kind of connect with the restaurant in a way, even though you're not, able to talk with them face to face.
Yeah,
definitely. And it seems like, especially in Houston, the community has been pretty supportive of local restaurants throughout the past year. And, with Southern Smoke and other initiatives locally that have happened, it just seems like there's a lot of rallying around local restaurants and trying to support. Have you felt that the past year from your customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're really lucky to have a very strong kind of regular base. And then also everybody in Houston generally is very supportive of each other, even though we're competitors. And I think a lot of us are very competitive, but weekly I get texts from different chefs kind of checking in on each other. And we order to-go food from each other. And I think that we definitely rally around each other, especially in the restaurant industry that's been hit really, really hard. But especially so much so, especially because then there's a lot of people that live paycheck to paycheck that don't have the ability to kind of not make wages. And so I think it's been a really great to see the city as an overall kind of help each other and buy food from each other, call each other out on social media to when they're doing really great things, and to kind of be generally happy with our ability just to support each other.
Yeah. Do you feel like things are getting back to normal? Do you think that there's some big changes that are here to stay, or are things kind of going back to how they were? Or what's kind of the current status of the industry as you see it?
I mean, I don't think that the way that it was pre-March 2020 will ever go back to the way that that'll ever be. Sometimes in a good way and sometimes in a bad way. Obviously, I think it also shows like how fragile the industry is as an overall as well. What I hope this means that, our ability to charge more and have higher wages for our staff, not for the owners to make more money, but so that we don't have such a fragile ecosystem in the restaurant and bar industry, because we are a front-facing industry. It's like our ability to talk to people and our ability to serve people are the only way that we can really honestly stay afloat. And even though you can do things like DoorDash or like Uber Eats, those types of things, it's like expressing personality into that isn't a lot of the reason why a lot of us got into this industry. And I think there's some things that'll change, and I hope most of them are for the better. I mean, but what I see for the restaurant industry is kind of a growth that's a lot faster. We're in general a pretty slow moving industry, and I think that little bits and pieces of kind of that growth will kind of stick with it, inclusive of like the to-go systems, and inclusive of maybe restaurants that a lot of restaurants that are supported by big money that don't necessarily have to make money. I'm not sure how many more of those will really want to because even I always say like even rich people don't like losing money. So
awesome. What are so you've had this amazing perspective on the restaurant industry, obviously opening, closing, a lot of different experiences, and then March hit, and then what would be kind of like your 3 tips for other restaurant owners who are kind of maybe in the thick of it, either to pivot or just to kind of keep their head up, or like what would your advice be to just other small restaurant owners out there?
I mean, I think first and foremost, always look out for your employees first, because those are the people that will hold you up more so than anything else. When things are tough, if they've seen that you've done the work to make sure that they're being supported, they're going to support you as well. Another one would be just to be able to be flexible on what your ideals and goals are. Sometimes it's okay to, and as I say, give in. I kind of like, if you're not really giving in, you're giving people what they want, even though it's maybe I'm of the purview of like what you really initially wanted your business to be. And so in that way, I mean, I'm not sure how I feel about the word pivot overall. It feels like we've been doing so much of it, just to have the flexibility and to just be kind of selfless in the way that you run your business. And sometimes the way to be selfless in the way that you run your business is to make sure that the business is going to be there for when things do get better. And so sometimes you do have to you can't shy away. You can't kind of shy away or hold off on making really hard decisions sometimes. And sometimes you have to make tough decisions in order for things to be good in the long term. So whether or not shrinking the size of your staff, which I would never want anyone to do, but it also allows for people to kind of make a decision on a couple of things, like whether or not they want to stay in this particular industry is one thing. Something that we have to kind of ask ourselves if that's something that we're holding back from people if they continue to be employed with us. But then also, like, can they, I don't know, something as weird as like, can they be making more money off of unemployment? Like if your business is struggling to a point where it's like that's a really tough question to ask yourself. You're like, man, can my employee, would it be better for them to be on unemployment until things do get better? So
Wow. Those are some really, I mean, truly, those are some really, really difficult decisions.
yeah.
What can, what can we do? Like, what can people who are not necessarily in the restaurant industry or
Yeah.
restaurant owners do to support our local restaurants, whether they're in
Well,
Houston or in LA, or is there
yeah.
anything we can do? Social, share on social, not order from DoorDash, like order
Right.
delivery. Just, I would love to hear, what are the 3 things we can
Well, I mean, it depends. Like look. I mean, obviously, if you're able to go to the restaurant, supporting your restaurant in person or to go is a big thing. Supporting financially is a big thing. So even if if you're not struggling as financially as say a restaurant worker, just tipping big and having a little bit of graciousness when you are at a restaurant. Sometimes a lot of times these restaurants were not built to do say like for to go food. And this is the first time that they've done to-go food for like this many people at once, and the kitchen's really small, and the food is maybe a little bit more difficult than they thought it was going to be. And it's going to take a while sometimes that we have to learn those types of things. So having a little bit of grace when you're out, knowing that we're not trying to take advantage of anybody, and we are trying to give the best service and the best food and best drink as we possibly can. So financially, graciousness, and then like some restaurants, I don't want to put like a dagger in like the third party services, but being able to but they do take quite a bit of percentage off the top of restaurants, and so a lot of us opt into that. So we don't want to take that away from people, so I don't ever want to make anyone feel bad for opting into a third party service. But if you have the chance, if you live close enough to like, instead of ordering it from a third party, just go pick it up, and that'll help us out a lot. And just being able to, and honestly, it's like supporting. And everybody always like says supporting local, but it's like, it's true. I mean, there's a lot of times where we kind of pour our hearts and dreams into it. And a lot of times they're in places that are not like as easy to get to, say so we have this really great place. It's in Greenway Plaza, but a lot of very small businesses started there. Those Greenway Coffee, Fish's Barbecue, Rice Box, those types of places that they, and Burger Chan, they're struggling down there because they're in an office building. But taking that extra 15 minutes to go park and drive down there to help support them, as opposed to going through a drive-through for like a large chain. I recognize that your time is important as well, but if you have an extra second, in that same way, thinking of other people while they're operating their business, because they're just holding on. We're all just kind of holding on, hoping for a brighter future on the other side. So
Totally. I mean, this is something Catherine and I also talk a lot with the small businesses that we work with, is really putting a face behind the brand.
Right.
So sometimes people shy away from the fact that they might be a solopreneur, or they might have like a 1 or 2 person team. But our advice is always like, introduce who you are, tell people how you got to where you are, because especially now I think is that real appetite to support just other human beings, and especially small businesses. So is there, we have a couple more minutes left. Is there anything else you want to share? Or I could have one more question. I don't want to take over, but
go for it.
I'm okay with another question.
Awesome. I mean, so, we are kind of, let's see, it's January 14th. And the vaccine's on the horizon, a new administration is on the horizon.
Yeah.
One day we will get out of this. I don't know when it is, but whether it's the end of 2021 or 2022, what are you most excited about?
I'm excited to be able to travel again, because I feel as if I've been in Houston for a very, very long time. So that's something I'm excited. I mean, I'm excited to, I don't know, give my parents a hug and not feel worried about it. I'm excited for ability to see people again, and there is going to be a brighter future ahead. I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't think anybody does. But I think overall, being able to, it felt like kind of, I don't think we moved backwards as a country or as the world. in 2020, we just had to really slow down and kind of take a look at ourselves to see how we got to the place that we were at. And I think that for us, learning how to listen to each other more, to listen to yourself more, to take care of yourself, whether it be physical health or even mental health, is really, really important. And I think that, 2020 will always just be the year of like, man, that was a crazy year. I can't believe I lived through that. And I'm excited to kind of continue the growth, even if it's a slower growth than I wanted for my career or for my life overall. But I'm excited to continue to help support other people and to be a part of this community overall.